Commanders fans have been waiting for evidence that this franchise is finally starting to return to relevancy. And in week 3, they got several of those signs. That and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, everybody, to today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. You can also find me writing about the Washington Commanders on WUSA9.com, DC's local CBS affiliate. And I'm here with you every Monday through Friday. I thank you for coming through for today's episode. All the everydayers out there, a special thank you to you for coming through every single day. Locked On Commanders is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Of course, you can do both of those things for free. And on today's episode, we're going to hear from Dan Quinn about running back Austin Ekeler. It is not good news. And I know a lot of you have been asking about it, so we're going to go over the situation there. We're going to hand out a fan-voted game ball. The insiders voted. They spoke, and we're going to give out a game ball for the Week 3 win. We're going to go over 3 things to stash and trash from the Week 3 win over the Cincinnati Bengals. But we're starting it all off with the Washington Commanders doing some historic things on Monday night, things that should give Washington Commanders fans some confidence moving forward that this franchise is actually steered in a right direction right now. Of course, if you want to get more out of the show, all you got to do is become a Locked On Commanders insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. From there, you can text me your questions, your thoughts. We'll have conversations. I'm going to text you all kinds of stuff, bonus content, inside information, and of course, invitations to our insider-only, insider-exclusive Zoom meetings. Got some cool ideas coming up for that I've been spitballing, talking with my bosses about. So a lot more coming on that front as well. It's a lot of fun. So again, go over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to become an insider today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL, and you will get $20 off your first purchase. So we've got to kind of condense some things, right? So long week, Monday Night Football means the next week is a short week. It's only shortened by 1 day, but that's a pretty big day when it comes to programming. So we're going to kind of combine the AAR, a little bit of an advanced scouting look at the Cincinnati Bengals, at the Arizona Cardinals, and we're going to do Quinn's quotes in the game ball all in this episode. So bear with me here as we get through here. 12:30 in the morning right now, Wednesday morning for me in Arizona. Just arrived here to Phoenix. The Washington Commanders practicing all week in Arizona as they prepare for the Arizona Cardinals. They're practicing over at the Arizona State campus, about 10 minutes from where I'm staying. So I'm super pumped to go over there for the week. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury returning to Arizona, Jayden Daniels returning to Arizona State, where he started his collegiate career. So a lot of storylines to follow here, so make sure you're coming through. But yeah, 3:30 in the morning Eastern time for the majority of you as we're recording this. So very, very early in the morning happening here on Wednesday. But look, what was supposed to happen on Monday night? Well, if you watched any of the national outlets, and look, I'll even admit myself, I predicted the Cincinnati Bengals to win. I think pretty much everybody other than the homerist of homers predicted the Cincinnati Bengals to win. But we talked about ways that the Washington Commanders could get that win. So what was supposed to be a Bengals get-right game, projected to win by a touchdown plus. I told you guys to take those points because didn't think that was going to happen, at least not the margin of victory anyway. What ended up happening, not only did the Washington Commanders get a win, but they kind of started getting themselves a little bit of a rep, and they've achieved things that franchises like the Kansas City Chiefs, the New England Patriots, certainly not the Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers, all those franchises have not been able to do. And the thing about this for the Cincinnati Bengals, this is the worst kind of loss for a team that's in the situation the Bengals are in. The Bengals are a team that not that long ago was in the Super Bowl, trying to win a championship, feel like their window is still open. When you look at the way this season has started, it's certainly not over. I do believe they're still a very good team. And I don't think that, this is a situation where like the whole thing is just kind of collapsing in on itself. But this is the first loss of the season. It's their third in a row, but it's the first one where they really don't have any excuses, right? New England Patriots, there were some uncharacteristic mistakes made, like tight end Tanner Hudson fumbling as he's entering the end zone for a critical touchdown. Those kinds of things are kind of fluky type plays. During the Kansas City Chiefs games, like you almost had them is kind of the way that came out of that. There's a penalty late that kind of changed the course of things. So if that penalty doesn't get called, plus it's the Kansas City Chiefs. So not that you're okay losing, but if you're going to lose to a team, losing to the Chiefs is not the end of the world. But against the Washington Commanders, Joe Burrow had his best game of the season. Jamar Chase had his best game of the season. It's only the third time the Bengals have ever lost when Jamar Chase had a stat line better than 6 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown, right? We talked about that heading into the game. The other opponents they lost to, the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is not a very deep club. When Jamar Chase has 6 catches, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns like he did on Monday nights, the Cincinnati Bengals, that's happened 5 times. They've won 4 of those times. The one time they lost this year to the Washington Commanders. When Joe Burrow completes 76% of his passes, has 324 yards of passing and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, it's happened 4 times in his career. And again, this is the only time he's lost. So this is a game where you have no excuses. You just got beat. So Washington has put the Cincinnati Bengals in some uncharted territory, but on the Commanders side of things, there's some uncharted territory going on as well. Specifically, quarterback Jayden Daniels, 21 of 23 passing, 91.3 completion percentage, the highest completion percentage by a rookie in a single game in NFL history. Name an NFL quarterback. He didn't do what Jayden Daniels just did on Monday night. Period. Washington Commanders fans, witnesses to history. That's never happened in the history of the league. It's also a single game high completion percentage in franchise history. I told you guys that the legend Doug Williams was just incredibly excited in that press box on Monday night. He never did, from a completion percentage standpoint, what Jayden Daniels did. And we should not go out there and say, well, Jayden Daniels is better than Doug Williams, he's better than this guy, better than that guy. It's just to put into perspective what you witnessed on Monday night. Washington recorded 3 rushing touchdowns in the first half. That's the first time as a team the Commanders have rushed for 3 touchdowns in the first half of a game since 1999. That's how long. There's Commanders fans out there who have literally never seen that happen. You saw it happen on Monday night. Washington scored on every drive the last 2 games, excluding kneel downs, becoming the only team since at least 2000, which means they're not really tracking this stat in the NFL before 2000, but since at least 2000 to score on every drive in multiple games, excluding kneel downs. Think about that. The New England Patriots dynasty, they never went 2 games. And I know it's the New England Patriots, they played a lot of first place schedules, right? But let's not forget like the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, the Buffalo Bills for a large part of that were like bottom of the barrel teams. And you're gonna play bottom of the barrel teams like you. There's no chance the New England Patriots just never had like a 2 back-to-back bad team draw on their schedule. Yet they never did that. They never did what the Washington Commanders have done this season. The Dallas Cowboys, certainly, quote unquote America's team, certainly have not done that. The Kansas City Chiefs looking for a three-peat. They've yet to do that. So that's something that's very impressive by itself. Again, there's no reason to try to connect dots like, oh, well, this team's better than the Patriots. This team's better than the Chiefs. We don't need to go that far, but just kind of putting in perspective what actually happened in this game. And then, of course, Washington is the first team in the Super Bowl era to have back-to-back games with 0 turnovers and 0 punts. That's the entire Super Bowl era. Dallas Cowboys mini dynasty never did it. Buffalo Bills 4 straight years to the Super Bowl never did it. Again, Patriots, again, Chiefs. So you could say this is about as complete an offensive game as you could have that you just witnessed the Washington Commanders play, which is amazing in a lot of ways. Where it's not amazing is like, how do you continue to improve from that? Like, how do you have that performance again in week 4 against the Arizona Cardinals? On defense, however, you got to see more improvement from what we saw in week 3. So that's going to lead us right into our next segment. 3 things to stash coming out of week 3, 3 things to trash coming out of week 3. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that thanks to our friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can go to FanDuel, you can check out the latest stats, you can view play-by-play and so much more on the exact same page that you're placing your bets. Exact same page I'm placing my bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. There's 0 win stipulation here. You don't have to win that $5 bet to get the $200 in bonus bets. All you got to do is bet the $5. Right now, the Washington Commanders are 3.5-point underdogs to the Arizona Cardinals. Not going to lie, kind of thought they'd probably be even on that line. but it is what it is. The over-under for that game in total points scored is set to 50.5. So obviously the odds makers paying attention a little bit to what the Commanders did score-wise on Monday night. So take full advantage of this latest opportunity. Just go to FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Continuing now with today's episode of Locked On Commanders, it's our sustain and our improve segment here on the show, our weekly segment where we go over 3 things we want to see sustained from the last outing for the Washington Commanders, and 3 things we want to see improved upon. And on CommanderGameDay.com, Sports Illustrated site that I cover the Commanders for, there we call it stash, and trash. So stash number 1, the first thing that I want to see the Washington Commanders stash and continue to do in week 4 that they did in week 3 is scoring touchdowns over field goals. Again, in week 2, just to remind you, the Washington Commanders scored 7 field goals. It was enough points to get the win in week 2 over the New York Giants. And that is the great part about it. They set out in week 3 to turn 3 points into 6 points and then let Austin Ekeler come out and kick the extra point. Don't need you for field goals. They did need him for 1 field goal, and that was great. But they scored touchdowns, 5 of them, in fact, on Monday night. So definitely making up for some of those missed opportunities in week 2 from a total scoring standpoint. In doing so, again, they got the win over the Cincinnati Bengals, but I think they also earned some respect across the National Football League as well. When you do that kind of stuff on prime time to a team that, again, like I just heard on Tuesday morning, a national pundit say the Cincinnati Bengals might be the best 0-3 team that's ever been 0-3. So, I mean, people are still not sleeping on these Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not saying they should be, but this is not a situation where teams are now discrediting the Bengals because they lost to the Commanders, and that kind of shows you the shift in opinion that the Washington Commanders are going through currently. And we'll see what happens after week 4. Trash number 1, we want to see improved. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and go for it. Pre-snap penalties. Look, the Washington Commanders got a lot better from week 2 to week 3, and I want to acknowledge that. And I absolutely want to say that's a good thing because it is a good thing. But late in the game, crucial drive, you're trying to put this game away, 2 false starts, 2 pre-snap penalties by this offense, puts them behind the 8 ball, puts them in a very bad situation. They end up with 2nd and 20. They convert it, which is great. And I agree with Jayden. I agree with Dan Quinn. I agree with Terry McLaurin, who all said it was great that they were able to overcome that. And I agree with them. But I promise you that Dan Quinn, this coaching staff, the offensive line coaches, tight end coach, wide receiver coaches, because the O-line didn't do the false starts, right? They're not happy with even 2 pre-snap penalties. They're not happy with any penalties where they're setting themselves back unnecessarily. So because I know that they're not happy with it, we're going to continue to talk about it. Again, this is not going to make it a weekly thing. Like anytime there's a false start, I'm not going to put pre-snap penalties in there. But I do want to go ahead and just acknowledge that, look, the presence of any of them, especially in those critical moments, you got to get rid of those. And I'm confident that they're working on doing that. Stash number 2, Scary Terry. So last week, Scary Terry was a trash because we weren't talking about Scary Terry, the nickname. We were talking about Scary Terry, the scary lack of production and lack of involvement in the Washington Commanders offense. Well, this week, we just talk about the right Scary Terry, the one that makes opponents scared to play this team, the one that makes opponents scared to play single man coverage because they're worried that they're going to give up a touchdown. And that's what this week's Scary Terry is about. Again, 4 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown. Biggest gain of the day, 55 yards, 27-yard touchdown was the final blow for the Washington Commanders to get their 2nd win of the season. That is the version of Scary Terry that this team needs to see way more often. Trash number 2, playing with fire. In week 1, Buccaneers receivers Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan got in there for a touchdown, but largely it was Mike Evans and Chris Godwin basically took over that game and really, really put it in a position where the Washington Commanders weren't going to get that win. Week 2, Malik Neighbors had a career day. I understand it was only his 2nd career game, but not only did he have a career day, he looked like a true blue future number 1 wide receiver for the New York Giants. In week 3, Bengals wide receiver Jamar Chase went off for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. I understand the Commanders got 2 of those wins. That's why it's called playing with fire. You're playing with fire if you keep allowing these receivers to have career days or career-like days and all this stuff. It is not a sustainable model to continue winning in the NFL, so they've got to get that under control. Stash number 3, East Coast McCaffrey, right? So there's only one McCaffrey brother actually playing right now in the NFL because Christian McCaffrey's on IR and apparently going overseas to see specialists to get his Achilles fixed and all that stuff. But outside of one really, really bad play, again, that touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin, or that big pass to Terry McLaurin, there's only 10 players on the field, and you don't want to let that happen um, too often, right? You want to make sure you're cleaning that up. And from the looks of it, looked like Luke McCaffrey was supposed to be that 11th guy on the field. He wasn't out there. However, he had some really critical plays. Finished with 3 catches and 44 yards, which certainly looks a little bit pedestrian. But he had an early 30-yard gain on a 4th down that helped set up the first touchdown of the game for Washington, and his 11-yard catch on a 2nd and 10 put the ball on the edge of the red zone, the 24-yard line, where Austin Ekeler, he did the rest and scored a touchdown from 24 yards out. So let's continue to see Luke McCaffrey, along with his rookie quarterback, developing, becoming a part of this team, and then being on the field when he's supposed to be as well. Trash number 3, comfy quarterbacks. The Washington Commanders got 2 sacks on Monday. 7th-round draft pick defensive end Javonte Jean-Baptiste got one of them by himself. And then Dante Fowler Jr. starting in place of Cleveland Farrell and Dorrance Armstrong each shared one. They shared one. So they each got half a sack in the game. It was good to see in the moment. It was good to see in the situations. And it's the first multi-sack game of the season for the Washington Commanders defense. But it's hard to ignore the fact that as a total unit, they just have 4 sacks this season. And this is a unit that is supposed to be embedded and eat, sleep, hunt the quarterback, hunt the football, all this stuff. They've got 4 sacks total for the season, and they are 30th in sack per pass attempt rates in the NFL through 3 weeks of play. Aiden Hutchinson for the Detroit Lions has 5 sacks by himself, or at least had 5 sacks by himself. I don't know if he got another one against the Detroit Lions or against the Arizona Cardinals rather last weekend. But coming into week 3, he had 5 sacks on his own. Got more sacks than the entire team does in Washington. So you definitely need to trash that. Definitely need to get more pressure and stop letting these quarterbacks stay comfy when they're playing against you. So that is our stash and trash for week 3 coming into week 4. Now I like to usually try to do a little bit of a film review where we talk about the next upcoming opponent for the Washington Commanders. Can't do a full breakdown here because again, we're condensing that into this whole episode. Crossover Thursday with Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals is coming up, and then Friday I will drop my deep dive into the must-dos for the Washington Commanders to win the Week 4 matchup. We'll make some predictions. We'll do that kind of stuff. It'll be really fun. So come back for that. But here's a little bit of the Arizona Cardinals. So I downloaded a couple games for the Arizona Cardinals this season. Just went through, kind of wanted to watch, see what I could pick out. Here's what I picked out. On offense for the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray not looking all that accurate. And I don't necessarily mean completion percentage, right? I didn't even look at his completion percentage for the season because that's not what we're talking about here. What I'm talking about is he's just off target on a lot of these passes. And even some of them that are being caught, they're being caught because his receivers, his tight ends are going up, climbing the ladder to make them, but they're not climbing the ladder to make catches on balls that should be climb the ladder type plays, right? Like they should be at the digits. They should be in front of their face. They should be wherever, and they're just not getting there. So Kyler Murray certainly having some accuracy issues, I think, this season. Doesn't look like he really wants to become a runner. Now, he kind of was more willing to become a runner against the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, designed runs, he's going to become a runner rather quickly, but he certainly is trying to stay in the pocket as a passer or at least stay behind the line of scrimmage. So to me, that's a little bit of an opportunity if you're the Washington Commanders defense to maybe get at him a little bit. John Connor is the getting my movie references, my football players confused here. James Conner is basically the physical presence for the Arizona Cardinals offense. Outside of him, it doesn't really look like they have a real physical presence. So if you're the Washington Commanders looking to bring physicality to them, there's certainly an opportunity to maybe get an advantage there. Early on, the Arizona Cardinals have looked to establish Connor as a big part of the game. They kind of go away from him from time to time. It's a little bit weird, to be quite honest with you. And as they start to trail, they do get a little bit pass happy. Which, when you look at the secondary in Washington, obviously you're kind of like, yeah, but that's not necessarily good news. But anytime an offense becomes one-dimensional, it makes it easier for a defense to go after them. So if the Commanders can get some points early, put the Arizona Cardinals in a hole, certainly that trend, if it keeps up, could play into the advantage of the Washington Commanders. The receivers also seem to have some issues right now this season catching through contact, which is a little bit interesting. Even Marvin Harrison Jr., the stellar rookie, has had some issues catching through contact. So we'll see if that continues. And then they've got a lot of injuries piling up on their offensive line. Of course, we'll get through injury reports as we get through the week here as well. On defense, this defense coming into the season, last year they allowed the most red zone drives in the NFL. They also were last against the run in the NFL. There's going to be some intermediate perimeter opportunities against this defense, especially when the quarterback extends, because this team likes to flow with movement and they kind of over pursue on movement and misdirection. So that's something that this offense could certainly use against them. Something that was interestingly pointed out by Mark Schlereth during the Lions Cardinals game that I thought that I wanted to make a note of is he noticed how the Detroit Lions used a lot of two tight end sets to keep the Cardinals from getting into their sub packages, which is where they try to bring a lot of their exotic blitzes. So I'll be interested to see if Cliff Kingsbury does the same and tries to force the Cardinals to stick in their base package. And then you can look for this defense try to out physical the Arizona Cardinals. Again, they're just not a very aggressive team, or rather the Commanders' offense to out physical the Cardinals' defense. Big run game opportunities should be there, and then Sean Murphy Bunting, one of the Cardinals cornerbacks, he should be the main target for Jayden Daniels and this Commanders passing attack on Sunday afternoon. However, before we get to Sunday afternoon and before we get to crossover Thursday, we do have to hear from Dan Quinn an update about one critical player and hand out a fan voted game ball. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that today thanks to our friends over at BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you like? Or was that spirit of learning and discovering new things lost in childhood? As we look around, kids are always learning, they're always growing. But as adults, sometimes we lose that natural curiosity. Well, what is something out there that you would like to learn? Maybe you want to get into gardening. Maybe you want to learn a new language. Or maybe you want to learn how to finally beat your best friend at your favorite game, backyard game, bowling, maybe, whatever it is. Maybe you just need to get that victory. Well, therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. It's especially helpful in helping you figure out where to find time in your day to do the things you love or would love to learn how to do. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, you need to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a little bit of a condensed combined AAR, a little bit of opponent film study, stash and trash, and then we're going to get into a quote from Dan Quinn here, and then we're going to hand out a fan-voted game ball, which I'm trying to make a tradition after every victory moving forward. So Quinn's quotes, look, he said a lot of good stuff, but the most important, I think, coming into next week is the update on the injury suffered by running back Austin Ekeler. So Austin Ekeler suffered a concussion on Monday night, came out of the game partway through the game, towards the end of the game than anything, did not return. And we found out leaving the stadium that Austin Ekeler also not traveling to Arizona with the team to get ready for Week 4 against the Arizona Cardinals. So Coach Quinn was asked for an update from on Austin Ekeler, said, quote, "So Austin had a concussion, also has a laceration on his ear. So he went back to Virginia today to begin the concussion protocol. So I'll have more info as it goes towards the end of the week. But instead of coming out here to Arizona, he went back home to Virginia to begin that process," end quote. So, don't expect Austin Ekeler to be on the field this weekend when the Commanders take on the Arizona Cardinals. And that's a blow. You know what I mean? He's been important on special teams. He's come through some really big plays as a running back, as a receiver. Obviously had that 24-yard score against the Cincinnati Bengals. And, so Jeremy McNichols would be in line to get more touches behind Brian Robinson. And then you assume that either Michael Wiley or Chris Rodriguez Jr. are going to get called up from the practice squad this weekend to give them three backs against the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know how much, I don't know which running back I kind of leaning towards. Like there's definitely, when you look at kind of how the Cardinals defense folds under physicality, Chris Rodriguez makes a lot of sense. But then you also look at the way they can get gashed, like if Brian Robinson can kind of wear them out, maybe they can get gashed for a little bit. Michael Wiley makes sense in that sense. So, there's cases for both backs. But either way, the Washington Commanders fully expect them to activate a third running back off the practice squad in place of Austin Ekeler. And then we've got our fan-voted game ball. Insiders voted. I put the vote to the insiders this week. And the winner, not by the landslide that I honestly expected it to be, but the winner nonetheless, rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels getting the game ball. So last week it was kicker Austin Seibert. This week it is quarterback Jayden Daniels. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin got a lot of votes. He was very close. It was a very close race between Jayden and Terry, but also Austin Ekeler getting a lot of shout outs and a lot of love in the votes. Not necessarily getting votes, but a lot of people said I'm voting for this person. But I think Austin Ekeler deserves a lot of recognition as well. So we're going to give him some recognition here. Noah Brown also getting some recognition. Cliff Kingsbury got a vote, which I thought was really cool to go after the offensive coordinator there. I thought that was a cool way to do it as well. And then fans. There was even some votes for the fans. Washington Commanders fans, y'all have been through a lot, and you've been sticking through there through thick and thin. And hopefully, you know, I don't know if the thick or the thin is supposed to be the better. I don't know which one's supposed to be better, but whichever one is supposed to be better, hopefully you're going to get a lot of that coming up here soon. In the next episode of Locked On Commanders, Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals and I will do a full preview of this weekend's Week 4 matchup between the two teams. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, all you got to do is text me. And to do that, all you got to do is go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Become an insider today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. First thing in the morning, Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off with a morning double shot of NFL espresso. And then in the afternoon, hang out with Tony Wiggins in the barbershop for some real NFL talk. And if you're doing this on Wednesday afternoon, you will hear me talking with Tony Wiggins on that episode. It's the all-new Locked On NFL, and it is twice a day. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.